back again. If you're like, oh my gosh, LinkedIn and YouTube has popped up, and why are you guys streaming? Well, it's because it's DEF CON. And we're just doing some rogue kind of live streams from our booth here at DEF CON 31. I'm Ian Meyer, and with me today, we have Dr. Cathy Ullman. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Excellent. So hopefully, those of you who start tuning in here, let us know how the audio is. It's very uns and very DEF CON and very loud, so apologize for that, but that's where we are. We're in DEF CON in Las Vegas, and we're broadcasting live from Camp BHIS here in the DEF CON Exhibitors Hall. And the reason we wanted to have Dr. Cathy Ullman on, I always say doctor because I'm always so impressed by that.
Oh, thank you.
You're quite welcome. Is one, you might know her as Investigator Chick, and you are just everywhere volunteering, doing things for the community. And what we said that we wanted to do with this booth is not just promote us, but people who are out there helping and volunteering and doing really good work, like writing a book. So you've got The Active Defender. It came out on July 26th. Tell us first, for people who don't know, tell us a bit about yourself. Introduce yourself.
Sure. So I am in defense. That is the space that I've been for a long time. I got into security about 2009. I was doing a little bit before that, but officially full-time in 2009. And I do a little bit of everything. I've been with the University of Buffalo for 23 and a half years now.
Wow.
And, basically, I wear a lot of hats. My primary responsibilities involve DFIR in particular, but I do lots of other things as well.
So I got the book on the 26th. I ordered it from Amazon or wherever fine books are sold, right? And we've actually, if you're listening, so some of you get the pop-up, and we actually had somebody earlier in a stream when we were doing a badge life stream. Kyle told us that somebody came up, was watching the stream, and then took a picture over it was very Inception, right? So if you're here, we do have a few books left of The Active Defender. The doctor here will sign, and we've got them here for list price. So if you're here before the hall closes, we're over in the exhibitor hall. You can meet them, you can get it signed, but I was reading it on the plane coming over, and you had Malware Jake Williams,
I did,
as your technical editor, and he had just, I know we talked about it earlier, but glowing things to say about you. And I agree, by the way. So.
I am so honored to have him as my technical editor and to have written the foreword. I respect him tremendously, and I cried when I read what he wrote in the foreword. It was so moving.
Yeah.
It was absolutely wonderful.
All right, yeah.
So, yeah.
And one of the things I wanted to ask you about is, so you come from a family of academics, right?
I do,
yeah.
yes.
And you had a mainframe in your house?
So the mainframe itself wasn't in my house.
Oh, okay.
But what we had was a direct dry copper line direct to the college.
Okay.
We had a terminal in the house. So we had an always-on connection to the mainframe from the time I was 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
And, which was an unheard of thing at the time.
Oh, sure, yeah. No.
Yeah.
And that's the part that cracked me up was you're like, so I didn't even know what a modem sounded like until later.
Yeah. So my dad would periodically check the couplers to make sure that the modem bank was working, and that was the only time I ever heard that noise. I associated it with him testing the couplers, not connecting and doing stuff.
Not getting on the internet.
Yeah, because, when we first did this, there was no internet. There was the connectivity with multiple universities and what was called BitNet, which was sort of a precursor to what we think of as the internet.
Oh, okay. All right. So the book, and we've been in the booth kind of talking about it. The way I'd been describing it was kind of, hey, if you are a blue team or defensive person, and you aren't thinking, or you want to know how do I think more like a red teamer, and how do I kind of translate that into defense? But I'd rather hear you tell it.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, sure. So basically, the idea is that defenders think in a particular way, and because of the way they tend to think about their systems and their environment, it actually leads to some poor assumptions. And the way offensive folks, regardless of specifically what they do, red teaming, pass testing, etc., the way they think about your environment is radically different.
Mm-hmm.
And if defenders don't understand that other way of thinking, they're missing half the security story. And that really is the aim of the book, is to, show you this other half of the story, how to think about your defenses the way an offensive person looks at the stuff that you have, instead of sort of our standard way of thinking about defense.
So let me ask you this: like, what was that just kind of general thing, the inspiration for the book? Just, hey, this doesn't exist, or was there kind of a moment where you're like, I should really write this?
Yeah, so it was a couple different things. The first was really, I went to my first B-sides at the suggestion of a friend who worked in the offensive security field, and I didn't know much about it. I had been a sysadmin and done support for a long time, and it was new to me. And he said, you should go to a B-sides if you want to understand offensive security. And I was like, what's a B-sides? And consequently, fast forward, I now run the B-sides that I had first attended.
That's how they get you. I went and showed up one year for Orlando, and then the next year I did a talk, and then suddenly I'm like, oh my, I'm the president. What happened?
Right. Yeah. So that was really my first exposure to it, and it was very much like a Matrix moment.
Right.
Where I had been taking the blue pill all these years, and then somebody was like, you should try the red pill. And it was literally opening up this whole other world that I didn't even know existed. And now I'm so excited about, because there's so much information sharing that goes on here, that I realized kind of once I took a step back, I'm probably not the only person in the defense universe that doesn't know about this. And gee, I bet a lot of other folks might find this useful. So I started talking to a handful of well-respected people in the community, and I said, what do you think of this idea, including Jake?
Yeah, sure.
And they said, you need to write this book. And that's really how it came about.
Yeah, no. Before I came to Black Hills, I was at Marriott Vacations, which I have nothing but good things to say about. I've actually said plenty of times, if it wasn't this job, I probably would have retired there. But the amount of times you will work with engineers or other IT folks, and you try and tell them, like, we have to do these security controls, and they don't quite get why. And it's not for lack of wanting to be secure. It's not for anything. It's just they're like, hey, I got enough stuff on my plate, and what you're saying doesn't really make a ton of sense to me for me to invest time in. This book really seems like it would kind of help that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I mean, what I've discovered is that there are things, again, going back to assumptions, right? The way a defender views the universe in terms of the stuff they're protecting, in many cases, they think, here's how the attacker would get in, and here's how this would work.
Right.
Without really understanding anything about how attackers and therefore offensive security folks, how they work. So I've had multiple conversations in the past with engineers and other people where they're like, oh, well, that's not possible.
Right.
And now I laugh at that because I'm like, would you like me to show you? Because while I'm not an offensive security professional, number one, I know a lot of folks who'd be happy to show a demo. And number two, I know enough about the tooling now and the methods and the procedures that I can point them to all kinds of material to say, this isn't just me that's telling you this.
Right.
Look at this attack. Look at how this company was breached. These are things real attackers do.
Right.
Offensive security folks do the same things. That's what they're paid to do. If you don't understand what they're doing, you're missing that half of the story.
No, I couldn't agree more. When I was teaching at Full Sail as an adjunct. I wrote a course there called Securing Systems and Data, and it was a little bit of blue team, a little bit of red team, and a bunch of VMs. And I had this company called Hammer Corp. We only sell hammers, and every lab they did, they would get an email from the boss, and it was literally that. It was something like, hey, we need to put this e-commerce site online, and don't worry about these security things, or don't worry about that. And then I would teach them how to show that this is a problem in a way that they could understand.
Yeah, and that's key.
Yeah. So I don't think I've ever asked you, like, your doctorate. What was your thesis? What did you do?
So my doctorate is in philosophy, which doesn't have a direct correlation to this, but I will say it required a bunch of upper level logic courses, which in thinking through some of these ideas has been really helpful. Making some connections and going from there. And my dissertation, which again doesn't really have anything to do with this, but I took the idea of what I called cultural artifacts, which are the things that represent who we are as a people. So whether it's a building or an object, it doesn't really matter, because those are things that represent who we are as people. They need ethical means by which they are conserved or restored.
Yeah.
So it was a combination of artifacts with ethics talking about that, because the perspectives that existed, which were very few, were fairly extreme points of view. And I took a more of a contextual approach and said, you need to look at the particular item or building or whatever and the context in which you're, conserving, restoring, to make those decisions instead of going in one extreme way or the other.
Yeah, no, I know I keep saying I couldn't agree with you more, which sounds, but I could not agree with you more, because, again, going back to lecturing and whatnot, I taught a monitoring class, and literally the first lecture was called The Philosophy of Monitoring, and I walked them through like the cave, the shadow
Plato's
cave,
cave,
Plato's cave,
which, by the way, is mentioned in the book.
Oh yeah,
if you haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, if all you've ever seen shadows, you don't know what you're looking for.
That's right.
And so we would get into a bunch of philosophy to just understand the idea of log monitoring and log review, and like, how do you actually know the known knowns and the known unknowns and that kind of stuff, right? So that's
awesome.
Yeah, some of the. So for those listening, right, and those watching later, if you are coming into the field and you're like, oh, I didn't go get an information security degree, oh, I didn't get an offensive degree, I didn't get whatever. Some of the best hackers I know have degrees in music, philosophy, because they've been taught how to think and find patterns and things like that. And once you realize it's all just patterns and thinking through something, it's just applying it in a different way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, one of the things that I said, my bachelor's degree is in music industry. And one of the things that I would tell people in interviews, because they'd say, well, what do you know about this subject? Your degree is in X, right? And my answer, and I tell undergrads this all the time in my own environment, look, the purpose of an undergrad degree is to understand how you learn best.
Right.
And then apply that to everything you do in the future. Right. It's in very rare cases is an undergrad degree about job training, right? That's a different
that's a trade
purpose.
School.
Right.
Go learn well. And trade schools are great. Don't get me wrong.
It's just different. And, so that's what I've always said is that, what my undergrad degree did for me was understand how to learn and how I learn best, such that, whatever it is I'm trying to learn, I have the skills to apply them. And, it made me a better, more well-rounded person.
Yeah. No, So if you had, you're trying to tell people about the book, and we said that, but what are, like, I don't know, the three things that if you were to say, hey, you're going to learn this, and these are the chapters or ideas that, I really want people to walk away from this and think about, what would they be?
So I think the first is defender assumptions.
Okay.
I do talk in the book about the kinds of things defenders take for granted. For example, you assume your tools will work the way they're supposed to and or as expected. And funny, they don't. And both offensive security folks and attackers alike take advantage of that. Yes. They learn how things really work. They have that hacker mindset, right? And that is key. So I would say that is one thing, that sort of overall arching idea.
Yeah.
The other is, the application of thinking about things in this, I almost want to say upside down way. Right. So, this idea that instead of thinking about defense, about putting up boundaries and walls and blocking, thinking about, if I were to attack, If I were to go looking for ways in and making these connections, how would I do that? Right? And that's at the heart of how your offensive security professional is thinking about things. So, for example, threat hunting becomes very different because instead of just looking for, you're not just looking for something that's unusual, right?
Right.
You're thinking about, well, if I was an OffSec person and I wanted to apply this procedure to this network, what kinds of things would I look for?
Right.
And because you have that knowledge, now you're thinking about this in a very different way. And I guess the only other thing I would say is, there's also a chapter on some basic tools that have been around a long time. It's not that I think people need to know the ins and outs of every tool.
Right.
But there is a tool, for example, called Mimikat,
Right.
which is a password stealer. It's used regularly. And there are a lot of people in the defensive universe who don't know what it is and have never heard of it.
Use it, yeah.
So just the familiarity, knowing these things are out there and knowing what they do,
right,
I think is another kind of key thing.
Yeah. There's two things that I want to touch on there to kind of go back to. And one,
sure.
I cannot tell you, because I spent, there's very gray in the beard, and I spent about 20 years working in corporate IT and security. And the number of times that I would say, well, what if somebody tried this? That I would get the response, why would anyone ever do that?
Right.
And I'm like, the fact that I'm asking that question means that somebody would.
Yep.
It works. And you go try it and you go, oh, wow, yeah, that's, that could happen, right? And it's wonderful that you've written something that people can go and look at and be like, well, let me go through and think that they're coming back to the logic thing. Like, let's follow the logic through. What happens when you try this?
Right.
What happens when you try that? What is the outcome? And they go, oh, well, it'll do this. But have you tried?
Right.
Right. So you also talk about like some conferences stuff, and you're a very, very, very active volunteer. You're volunteering now, and I'll let you say where are you volunteering now at DEF CON?
So I'm with the Packet Hacking Village.
Okay.
Here at DEF CON.
Okay.
And I run the info booth.
Answering questions, helping people out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Giving them info.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? For those of you watching, and you're like, I'm not a doctor. I don't have 20 years in the industry. How do I get into the industry? You can literally go to conferences and be like, I'm really interested, and people are like, oh, that's cool. Here, read this. Read this book. But if you go, I'm really interested. Can I help lift boxes? Can I help answer questions? Can I do whatever? And the people you will meet, and I used to say this about B-sides, you might be stuffing shirts in bags, and you have a whole conversation with someone, then you find out they're like the VP of some company.
Yeah.
Because that's
Absolutely.
just what they do. So and they're just people, right? And when you show up and you do something, and people know they can count on you to show up, great.
Yeah.
They go, hey, you know what? You'll do the work. I'll invest in you to teach you.
Absolutely. And our whole community, I think, is so interested in giving back. I mean, honestly, that was really at the end of the day my impetus for writing the book.
Right.
This community has given me so much. I wanted to give it back something, to.
So Evilise is asking a question here. Where can I get the book? Well, Evilise, I'm going to answer that question right on screen because I actually got that set up in advance. You can go to Amazon at that link right there. But Active Defender Immersion Offensive Security. And I'm assuming you're not here at DEF CON because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, like maybe 6, 7, 8, 9 copies left. And so the hall closes in about, 23 minutes. So if you got the alert on the phone, you're sitting in Hallway Con listening to this, and you're like, I'd really like to get that book. Come over now. We've got a couple copies left, and you can get it signed. So you don't need to go to Amazon and get it. Meet the author, do all that good stuff. So definitely check that out. Going to be volunteering more, going right back to the Packet Hacking Village?
Yep, I will be going there until we close.
There you go.
Yep, and then I'll be back again tomorrow because we're open tomorrow.
Very good. So I'm going to ask real quick, in the chat here before we wrap up. If people are watching, I know we have a little bit of delay, but before we wrap up, I'll do a little programming notes about what we're going to be doing tomorrow. If you have any questions, I'm watching the chat now on YouTube and LinkedIn. I'm happy to ask the questions live. And while you're thinking about your questions and we get that delay there, do keep in mind, if you're out here at DEF CON, we will be here on Sunday. Joe Gray was going to do a stream with us earlier, and his book signing went long. So he's actually going to come back tomorrow, and we're going to talk to him about his book, which is the Practical Social Engineering. And I don't think we have any of his books left. I think we sold out, but we are going to talk with him about same thing. Why'd you write the book? What got you into it? You know, all that good stuff. And I'm hoping to get a few other people. I think Alex from Trace Labs is going to stop by as well, talk about how the CTF went for Trace Labs, which was intense from what I heard. I mean, it's a really good project to help find missing people, and sometimes it's rough, but it's the work that needs to be done. So I do not see any questions here, but you are very active in our Discord.
Yes,
So,
I'm there.
Yeah, if you have questions for Dr. Cathy Ullman, you may go to discord.gg/BHIS. That's for Black Hills Information Security, and look for Investigator Chick.
Yep.
And say, hey, I got your book. I've been reading it. I got questions or whatnot. And
there may be a slight delay while I'm in Vegas, just because I'm doing all the things.
Right, all the things.
But
yeah,
but I'm happy to answer questions as folks come up with them.
Awesome. So it doesn't look like we have any questions right now, but you got to get back to the Packet Hacking Village.
I do.
So we're going to wrap up here. We're going to do, again, a couple more broadcasts, and I think I'm going to drag Deb in tomorrow. Yes, I am. Tomorrow. Oh, yeah. She's staring at me with her hat on, shaking now. We got to do a DEF CON debrief. Oh, yes, we do. I wish y'all could see her face right now. She's like, no, we don't. We don't have to do that at all. So, all right. So from all of us here at Camp BHS at DEF CON 31, Cathy, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And for everyone online, we'll do a couple more little like rogue live streams. So when you see that pop up, jump in, and if not, go over to the live tab and you can check out the replays. So thank you much. We're gonna end the stream, and I'm gonna symbolically tell Ryan to burn it with fire, but I'm actually pushing the button. So.